session, and in this one we're going to go over cholesterol, right? In my intro video, where I detailed why it is that I started this whole channel, a big part of why is because of cholesterol. Like, it's some of the issues I deal with, a few of them are genetic, right? And among the ones that are genetic, cholesterol happens to be one of them, right? So I do deal with high cholesterol, and so it was very personal to me to want to get to a section where I kind of do cholesterol by itself and just really go over like a lot of the things that I've learned over the years dealing with it, and just kind of just detailing that for you guys, so that maybe some of y'all that deal with it out there too, and just like me, you will have a better idea as to how to move forward. So we're gonna go ahead and get right into it. So as a reminder, okay, just a little bit of background for you on cholesterol. From my fats video, I believe it was session 101B, cholesterol is a type of sterol, right? Now, what cholesterol is it's a waxy-like substance that facilitates a few different roles in our bodies. So among them being, it helps build and maintain our cell membranes, right? So cholesterol is, mind you, it's an essential fatty acid, but like with anything, too much of one thing can be very bad, and we'll go into that here in a minute. But outside of the cell membranes, it also aids in producing bile in the liver, which, as bile, some of you may know, bile is good for digestion, right? It's what we need, for our bodies to effectively be able to digest the things that we consume. It also is a precursor for hormone production. So the specific type of hormones that cholesterol helps to produce is testosterone for men and then estrogen for women, right? Because if you remember also from my fats video, as a reminder, the testosterone and estrogen, those are different types of sterols. And last but not least, among the main roles anyway, cholesterol does help synthesize vitamin D, and that one was detailed in my fat soluble vitamins video. Vitamin D acts similarly to calcium, so vitamin D is what we require for strong bones and for teeth. Now let's go ahead and talk about some things that maybe you've heard of before, maybe not, but HDL and LDL. HDL stands for high density lipoproteins, whereas LDL stands for low density lipoproteins. Now the HDL is what's known as our good cholesterol, and the LDL is what's known as the bad. So with HDL, our body absorbs cholesterol into our blood, and then it carries it out to the liver, where our liver then processes it and then excretes it in our feces when we go number 2. Whereas the LDL works very much differently. I mean, like very, very opposite of HDL. What LDL does though is those cholesterol, those fatty acids, they build up in our arteries, right? And what happens is they convert over to plaque. Now, once they convert over to plaque, they block our artery walls. And when that happens, of course, your arteries, those are pathways for our bodies to be able to, transport blood, right? You need your arteries for blood flow to and from your heart. So when there's a restriction, and enough of a restriction, if LDL keeps building up over time, enough of a restriction is going to start giving your body, you'll start experiencing what I'm about to go into next. CVD, otherwise known as cardiovascular diseases. Cardiovascular diseases consists of a bunch of different types of chronic diseases. So you have CHD, which is coronary heart disease. You then also have atherosclerosis, hypertension, diabetes, strokes. All of that is up under the umbrella of CVD. And cardiovascular diseases is one of the leading causes of death in this country. Just to give you some numbers, because some of y'all do well with numbers, maybe some of you don't, but it always helps to sort of have everything in perspective using numbers. Over 600,000 deaths a year occur. Over $550 billion in healthcare costs. It's projected to, the healthcare costs projected to exceed about $1 trillion by the time the year 2035 comes around. To give you a little bit more numbers, this one is a little bit more of a breakdown as to which ethnic groups sort of experience it the most. And I'll also leave a chart for like some of the other groups that I couldn't really fit on this board, but I wanted to put the highest ones first. African Americans, so in our community we face CVD at a rate of about 23%. We face it at the highest rate. especially as it relates to cholesterol. Asians, Native Americans, and Pacific Islanders, they face it at a rate of about 18%, and whites, non-Hispanic whites, they also face it at about 18% as well. This is according to the CDC's website. I'll link that here too, just so that you can, get another, look at it. But that leads up to about a total of approximately 92 million deaths a year. Also totals about 1 in 3 deaths since the year 2017. So it is very much a public health issue, dealing with cholesterol among other, cardiovascular diseases that I've mentioned. Over here, we're going to go into what I wrote down as a blood lipid panel. So, just about all of us, if you go to a doctor, then, you have annual checkups, and in those annual checkups, your doctor may ask for a fasting blood lab, right? Well, in those labs, one of the things that they look for is your blood lipid panel. That's one of the things that they evaluate. And so, when it comes to your blood lipid panel, what this panel does specifically is it measures out your cholesterol and fatty acids. So there are 4 different things that your blood lipid panel evaluates, which is your total cholesterol, your HDL levels, your LDL levels, and your triglycerides. What I have here is I have a normal range as well as a risk range. So obviously, also, since I mentioned that some of us face it at a higher rate, because of the ethnic groups we belong to, that may come into account. So like for us as African Americans, we may actually be allotted a little bit of a higher limit than the normal range, just because of, us being African Americans, which I'm going to get into on the contributor side. I'll go into that a little bit. But normal range, for total cholesterol, you want less than 200 milligrams in adults, right? If you're 20 and under, then the range becomes 75 to about 129, right? That's normal range. Now, if you're over 200, you're at risk, okay? You're at risk for the diseases that I mentioned, especially if you don't work to actually get those numbers down, because it's not just like, you have one blood lipid panel and then they find out you're at risk one time and then all of a sudden, you got to actually, you get a chance to work at it. Like most things that happen with us, as you may know, is progressive. So if we keep, if we don't do anything about the issues that we have, if we don't do anything about, these panels, that's when it becomes a problem. If you get like a one-off, then, your doctor may just say, okay, let's watch this, maybe increase your whatever physical activity, which, like I said, I'll get into about in a minute. But these things are progressive, so it's not just like a one-off, HDL is next. So your high density lipoproteins, which is the good cholesterol, right? Normal range is 40 to 59 milligrams, but over 60 milligrams is what's looked at as protective against heart diseases, against these cardiovascular diseases that I mentioned, right? If you're over 60, then you're in a protective state. Your low density lipoproteins, the bad ones, is you want less than 100 milligrams. That's normal range. Now, if you're at risk, right, maybe because of genetics, or like me, right, genetics, and of course I'm African American too, so 100 to about 160 is, depending on the doctor that is, they may allow you that threshold. They may allow you between 100 to 160, depending on, the risk factors that come into play. With LDL, over 160 milligrams though, you're at risk. All right, and I forgot to mention with HDL, if you have less than 40 milligrams, what that means is you don't have enough HDL. Your body is, it could be that your liver is having a difficult time processing cholesterol and excreting it the way that our bodies are supposed to. So, if you have less than 40 milligrams, it could be something as simple as you not getting enough items that help promote HDL production, or whatever the case may be. Maybe you have entirely too much LDL, because with HDL and LDL, they happen to be a direct relationship oftentimes. And this is not always the case, but with HDL and LDL, sometimes the higher the LDL you have, the lower the HDL you might have. Like LDL does have a tendency to lower HDL, but on the flip side, you could have normal or even a little above normal HDL level and still have high LDL. So, things like that, It could be something as simple as maybe you're not getting enough exercise, or maybe you're eating too much of foods that you're supposed to stay away from and not enough of the foods that you want to get to promote HDL, more HDL, to decrease LDL. There's different things that go into that. Last but not least, we have triglycerides. Now, if you remember my fats video, triglycerides is one of our essential fatty acids. When we eat fattening foods, our bodies take and store that fat as triglycerides, right? It stores it in our triglyceride stores, or our adipose tissue, if you will. And it stays there essentially until our body has a need for it. Our body has a need to break into those stores and use it. So the bad thing about triglycerides, though, it's not like carbs, right? Carbs, when you consume carbohydrates, our bodies use that immediately. That's our body's #1 preferred source. Fats come later, but fats stay in our body. They don't go anywhere. They don't, like, unless our body, like I said, taps into it, they don't go anywhere. They store and then they stay until necessary. Carbs, they don't stay for very long. Carbs, your body will convert it to glucose immediately, and whatever carbs is left over gets stored in glycogen stores. But if you remember from my carbs video, glycogen stores, they only stay for about maybe a day to up to 2, depending on the person. But they don't stay forever. They don't stay like fats do. So triglycerides less than 150 milligrams is normal. Anything over, of course, you're at risk. You got a little bit too much, triglycerides in your body. Maybe that's a result of you eating too much fatty foods, too much, processed foods, meats, right? Too much sugars. And since I'm talking about that, I guess that leads me over to the contributors. Now, some contributors of high cholesterol is lack of physical activity. As we all know, when it comes to the specific physical activity that I'm referring to is cardio. Okay, so you do want to do cardio to help reduce LDL and even promote a little bit of HDL. I spoke about this, I believe, in the fats video, if I'm not mistaken. But when it comes to the type of physical activity you do, that determines whether it's carbs or fats that your body will tap into. The higher intense physical activity, right, the more like HIIT workouts, right, high intensity interval training or sprinting, stuff like that, or even marathon running, your body will prefer carbs. But when it comes to fats, your body will tap into fats normally for, like, say, a weightlifting session or for any kind of cardio session that's a little bit more moderate. Okay, that's not as intense. Physical activity, right, lack thereof. So if you're maybe if you're the type of person that's stationary, right, or you stay behind, maybe you work behind the desk as a day job, things like that, you may want to make sure that you supplement that lifestyle with some form of physical activity. Now, the next contributor is foods with saturated and trans fats. Research has shown that those types of fats increase LDL. Those types of fats are found in your processed meats, and I wrote fast food as an example. So for those of y'all that love to eat fast foods, I don't want to say cut it out completely unless you're like severely, at risk to where you're nearly just too far gone. Like, my 600-pound life people, for example, reduce it. So now you have refined and added sugars, which I spoke about in my carbs video. So pastries, cakes, desserts, some candies, chocolates, and even like, certain greases that you may cook with. So like bacon grease is an example. They contain the types of fats that contribute to high cholesterol. They raise your levels. So you may want to be careful with those as well. Try not to eat too much. A lot of us, myself included, I'm not even gonna lie to you, chocolates, that's definitely one of my, it's something that I tend to overindulge in sometimes. I try to be mindful of it, but I'm sure there's a lot of us out there that are the same way. So be careful of your overindulgences, alright? Your chocolates, cakes, desserts, all of that. You want to make sure that you moderate those as well. Okay, significantly reduce them if you're at risk, or if you have high levels. Now, genetics is another contributor. That's another risk factor. It may be uncomfortable for some, but it's definitely a necessary conversation that we do have to have. My doctor even tells me, he's told me a couple times actually, whenever my levels were a little high, whether it was cholesterol or it was I'm in pre-diabetes stage or hypertension. For us as black people, What that ties back to, he told me, was essentially slavery. He would remind me of how, for the slave trade, they would take the strongest black man, strongest black woman, breed them together to create kids, that would contribute to slave labor. And that left us with issues like this for generations to come. Okay, so genetics, our ethnicities, all of that is a risk factor. And that also is a reason as to why, if you're a certain ethnicity, that's also why you may get a little bit more of a higher threshold when it comes to the normal limit. I myself am one of them. I'm allowed a little bit higher of a threshold. Obviously not too high. Every doctor, they'll take your labs and whatnot that you've had over the years. If you've went to go see them enough, for at least a few years, then they have a few years worth of labs and data on you that they can use to, compare and contrast. So, if you're doing better than the previous year, usually your doctor won't say a whole lot. They'll just tell you to keep it up. But then if you start getting worse, then, they'll start looking at, all right, we may have to look at possibly giving you some medications if you can't do this on your own, And medications is the one thing you want to stay away from. You don't want to get on meds, because if you get on meds, oftentimes it's hard for you to weed yourself off of it. Another contributor to high cholesterol is even age in some cases, because it's no secret that as you age, right, as I spoke about the HDL, your body's supposed to absorb that into the blood, send it out to the liver, your liver excretes it. Well, as we age, oftentimes our liver may not effectively be able to excrete cholesterol the way that it's intended to do so. So sometimes age, does play a part. You definitely want to make sure you're taking care of your vital organs, all right? Your liver, your kidneys, your lungs. You want to make sure you take care of those. Now, here are some remedies, right? I talked about all the contributors, all the bad stuff, but now here's some remedies. First, I want to start out with saying switch out your saturated and trans fats for mono and polyunsaturated fats, because those tend to have what's called omega-3 fatty acids. Omega-3s, have been shown to reduce LDL and increase HDL, right? Also, they do, other things such as, they help prevent and even, lessen inflammation, right? So, we hurt ourselves or what have you, or, even just in general, like with our heart, okay, with cholesterol, inflammation oftentimes does come into play. So we want to make sure that we reduce that, and omega-3 fatty acids does just that. It does the trick. If you remember from my fats video, mono and polyunsaturated fats, those are what's called healthy fats. And you can get those in avocado oil, olive oil, and certain fish like salmon, mackerel, and even herring. Now, avocado oil, I put here a greater than sign, instead of using butter and margarine, right, as an example. Because butter and margarine, those are, hydrogenated types of fats. So they were liquid at one point, they were unsaturated, and then they became saturated through hydrogenation. Just as a reminder as well. So you want to make sure you, eat better foods. You want to make sure you switch out what you cook with, right? Cooking sprays, cooking oils. You want to, be mindful of those, all right? Don't always use butter. Don't always use bacon grease. You can use them every now and again, right? Just don't always use them, especially if you're at risk or you're already dealing with high cholesterol. The next remedy we have is to increase physical activity. That was pretty much a given. Now, specifically, the type of physical activity you want to worry about increasing is cardio. That's not to say you can't weight lift, right? I wouldn't tell you that. You can definitely weight lift. Weightlifting has its own benefits, right? Build, our muscles. It helps, our musculoskeletal system. It even helps build strong bones too. So, but for high cholesterol, you want to make sure you increase your cardio. Health organizations recommend that we do about 150 minutes per week of moderate intensity cardio. So what that means is, like, say you're doing a 3-mile run, or like maybe even a 2-mile run or something like that. Whatever you can do in 150 minutes a week. So that may be like 5 30-minute sessions, or maybe even 3 50-minute sessions if your body can handle that, if you're conditioned enough to be able to do that. Or maybe like 4 45-minute sessions or something like that. Just depends, right? Depends on what you can do. But there is another option. You can do 75 minutes per week if your cardio is a higher intensity. So like HIIT workouts. Of course, HIIT is high intensity, like it's in the name. So if you do high intensity cardio, you can go with doing 75 minutes a week, and you can get away with that. That's satisfactory for, you know, helping to reduce cholesterol. It'll work on trying to reduce the LDL that's in our bodies. It'll work on trying to reverse a lot of, you know, the plaque that's in our bodies, in addition to switching out, you know, certain foods. You know, as far as foods, you know, I forgot to mention, you know, because I don't want to leave anybody out. If you can switch out, you know, certain foods for more plant-based options, that also has been shown to reduce LDL, or even reversing the plaque that's in their bodies. I remember watching a documentary. It's on Netflix, I believe, still, and it's called What the Health. So, you know, there was this guy, you know, his name was Kip, and he kind of just goes around different hospitals. He talks to different doctors, and, you know, what really got me was some of the patients that had ailments. I know there was like one lady who couldn't walk without her. She needed a walker in order to move. And another person took like so many medications. And once towards the end of the documentary, it's a little bit of a spoiler for you if you haven't seen it. Sorry, but you know, towards the end, the lady with the walker and the person who was on like all those meds, everybody that had ailments, right? All the patients that had, you know, certain ailments about themselves, certain illnesses and sicknesses even. Once they started switching to plant-based diets and they started eating those diets for a while, their ailments got reversed. All of a sudden, the lady with the walker, she didn't even need it anymore. She could walk just fine on her own. You know, so the power of a plant-based diet, you know, a lot of times people who eat meat and whatnot, they're just kind of like, they look at people that eat plant-based diets and they're like, why? You know what I'm saying? But, you know, you shouldn't discriminate, right? You shouldn't discriminate because people have their own reasons as to why they want to eat a plant-based diet or why they feel like they have to, right? So you don't want to discriminate, okay? If you're a meat eater, that's fine. If you're a plant-based dieter, that's fine too. You know, vegetarian, vegan, maybe you're an ovo-vegetarian, or, you know, that's fine. Everybody has different reasons for, you know, eating the things that they do, you know. So last but not least, we have fruits, right? So just as another like switch out, right? Instead of candies, chocolates, pastries, and etc., start eating more fruits and whole grains. With fruits, right? Fruits have sugars that occur naturally in them, as opposed to the added and refined sugars and artificial flavoring that you get in the pastries and in the candies and chocolates and desserts and everything else, right? So you want to make sure that you know, eat more fruits, okay, and whole grains. You want to make sure you eat leaner, you know, going back to the meats. If you are going to eat meat, that's fine. Just make sure you eat the lean cut of a meat. So if you're eating chicken, you eat more chicken breast, right? Eat the white meat. So, you know, if you eat steak, certain parts of the cow, the leaner parts is going to have less saturated and trans fats. So those are definitely things to look out for. If you eat ground beef, right, there's different percentages of ground beef. So like you may see 96.4 or 93.7. 96.4, I believe, is the leanest ground beef that you can eat. Okay, what that means is there's 96%, it's 96% lean and about 4% fatty. It's the healthiest type of ground beef you can get. Now, 93.7 is still a nice happy medium. It just means it's 7% fatty, 93% lean. It's still a good, you know, happy medium. 85.15 is, you know, another one. 85.15, you know, so now you're looking at a little bit of a higher fatty content, which means you're saturated in trans fats content on the nutrition facts. It's gonna elevate a little bit with 85.15, but then there's 75.25. You know, that's even worse. So those are things you just want to be mindful of. Make sure you check the packaging of everything, right? Make sure you know, understand where that meat is coming from, you know, and how it's cooked, how it's prepared. Be mindful of all of that, all right? And that pretty much concludes our cholesterol video. You know, just a short recap, right? If you deal with high cholesterol, or even if you don't deal with it, you can always be put at risk for it if you're not careful about what you eat, about your lifestyle. You can always get put at risk. Things can change, okay? Make sure that you're being mindful of what you eat. Make sure that you're getting your workouts in, right? Physical activity is a must, and I get it. Everyone has different lifestyles. You may have a spouse, you may have kids, you know. Try to find a way to work physical activity into your lifestyle. Maybe you can even involve your kids, right? You know what I'm saying? Especially if the issues that you deal with are genetic. So you know if you have genetic issues, they can pass to your kids. So the earlier you get your kids started, if you have kids, the better, right? And the better it'll be for you to incorporate those activities into your lifestyle. So, you know, definitely be mindful of that. Reduce your processed meats and your added and refined sugars. Try to get foods that have natural sugars in them, like fruits. Try to, you know, keep up on your vitamins and minerals, right? I did a whole segment about the vitamins and minerals, and you know, those essentially act as coenzymes that help our bodies do things like produce more HDL and lowering LDL. Increase omega-3 fatty acids because they help with, you know, reducing LDL. You know, research has shown to do that too. So the cardio, 150 minutes per week, remember that, because I have a hard time remembering it myself, trust me. You know, I don't always do 150 minutes per week. I try to do, like, I might end up with 120. And I do got that extra 30 minutes, believe it or not, does make a difference. Oftentimes too, like, see my doctor, you know, I want to say no smoke to him, but this is going to sound a little bit like it, just to be honest. You know, my doctor does, I get that he went to school, he has his, you know, doctorate and whatnot, but he's also, you know, he's got a big belly. So, you know, when he tells me to increase my cardio to get my levels down, you know, I take it. I know he's telling the truth. I know he's not, you know, lying to me, but it can oftentimes get hard taking advice from somebody who, you know, does have that stomach, you know, who may not do it themselves. And so that's one thing that I firmly believe in. I wanted to say that because I really firmly believe that I wouldn't tell you to do something that I don't do myself, okay? So, or at least try to, right? So you're not seeing me out of shape telling you to, you know, go increase your cardio or, you know, do more of that, do more of this. Like, I do it myself. So, you know, I try to be mindful of that. I don't want to be the person that doesn't practice what they preach. Again, you know, I'm thankful for my doctor, but, you know, it gets hard sometimes. If you enjoyed this video, like, comment, subscribe if you feel inclined. I really appreciate it. And if you have any questions, comments, concerns, leave them in my comment section. I do check them out frequently. Thank y'all, and until next time.